The massive chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy as delegates from across the galaxy took their seats. The walls, made of crystalline material that glowed with soft blue light, stretched high above the assembled beings. Each species had their own section, with translation devices floating near their heads to convert the various languages into something they could understand. Ambassador Krixtal of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center podium, his tall gray form casting shadows across the floor. His forearms moved gracefully as he activated the holographic display above him. The image showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. "Fellow council members," Krixtal began, his voice carrying through the chamber with authority. "We gather today to discuss the human problem." A wave of chitters, clicks, and various alien sounds filled the room. Most of it was laughter. The humans had been a source of amusement for the galactic community ever since they had been discovered, 50 years ago. Their primitive technology and violent history made them seem like children playing with dangerous toys. Lisa Parker sat in the human section, a small area that could barely hold 5 people. She was the only human representative present, a middle-aged woman with short brown hair and tired eyes. She had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years, and those 3 years had been filled with endless mockery and dismissal from the other species. "The humans have been expanding their presence in space," Krixtal continued, manipulating the holographic display to show crude human space stations and slow-moving ships. "Their technology is laughably primitive. They still use chemical rockets to escape their gravity well. Their warships are made of basic steel and powered by nuclear fusion." The laughter grew louder. The Carillion delegate, a being that looked like a giant insect, clicked its mandibles in what Lisa had learned was their version of hysterical laughter. The Veltaran representative, a floating jellyfish-like creature, pulsed with colors that indicated extreme amusement. "However," Krixtal raised one of his 4 hands for silence, "their expansion continues unchecked. They have established colonies on 17 worlds and built mining operations in 43 asteroid fields. While their individual capabilities are weak, their numbers are growing." Lisa kept her face neutral, though inside she felt a familiar anger building. These beings saw humans as nothing more than an inconvenience, like insects that had somehow learned to use tools. "I propose a simple solution," Krixtal said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "A demonstration of power. We send a small fleet to blockade their homeworld. They will see the futility of resistance and accept their proper place in the galactic order." The Torvan delegate, a massive bear-like creature covered in purple fur, stood up. "You would waste military resources on these primitives? A single cruiser could destroy their entire fleet." "True," Krixtal agreed. "But we must follow proper procedures. The humans have technically been recognized as a spacefaring species. We cannot simply destroy them without cause. However, a blockade that forces them to submit to galactic authority would be legal under council law." The discussion that followed was painful for Lisa to watch. Delegate after delegate stood to offer their thoughts on the human problem. Some suggested simply ignoring humanity until they destroyed themselves, as violent species often did. Others recommended quarantining the entire solar system to prevent human expansion. The Altarian delegate, a tall being with blue skin and silver eyes, offered what many considered the most reasonable approach. "Perhaps we should study them further. Their rapid technological advancement is unusual. In 50 years, they have gone from being unable to leave their atmosphere to establishing colonies on other worlds. This comment was met with dismissive sounds from around the chamber. The Zephyrian ambassador waved one of his hands dismissively. "Their advancement is crude and inefficient," Crixtal said. "They waste enormous amounts of energy and resources on every project. Their space stations require constant resupply because they cannot even build proper life support systems. Their warships are slow, heavily armored because they lack proper shielding technology, and their weapons are kinetic projectiles that would bounce off any civilized ship's defenses." More laughter filled the chamber. Lisa had heard these criticisms many times before. It was true that human technology was different from what the galaxy used. Where alien ships were sleek and used exotic energy sources, human vessels were bulky and relied on familiar physics. Where alien weapons used particle beams and plasma, humans preferred solid projectiles fired at high speed. "I call for a vote," Crixtal announced. "All in favor of authorizing a limited military action to force human compliance with galactic authority?" Hands, tentacles, claws, and various other appendages rose throughout the chamber. Lisa counted quickly and felt her heart sink. It was nearly unanimous. Only a few species abstained, and none voted against the proposal. "The motion passes," announced the council speaker, an ancient being whose species had founded the council thousands of years ago. "Ambassador Crixtal, you are authorized to use necessary force to bring the humans into compliance with galactic law." Lisa stood up slowly, feeling the weight of every alien gaze upon her. The chamber fell silent as she activated her own communication device. "Council members," she began, her voice steady despite the fear she felt. "Earth respectfully disagrees with this decision. We have violated no galactic laws and have acted only in self-defense when attacked by pirates or hostile forces. This action is nothing more than bullying of a smaller nation because you fear our potential." The laughter that erupted was even louder than before. Several delegates made comments that the translation devices rendered as various insults about human intelligence and capabilities. Crixtal smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Ambassador Parker, your species has had 50 years to prove that it can be a productive member of the galactic community. Instead, you have established military outposts, expanded aggressively, and refused to accept limitations on your growth. This action is necessary to maintain peace and order." Lisa nodded slowly, then activated her personal communicator. The device was different from the ones other delegates used, bulkier and more primitive-looking. But it worked, and that was what mattered. "Earth Command, this is Ambassador Parker," she said clearly, knowing that every being in the chamber could hear her words. "The Galactic Council has authorized military action against Earth. I recommend implementing Protocol 7 immediately." The silence that followed was deafening. Protocol 7 was not a term that had ever been mentioned in any galactic database or diplomatic communication. The alien delegates looked at each other with confusion. "What is Protocol 7? Asked the Veltaran representative. Lisa looked around the chamber one final time, meeting the eyes of beings who had just voted to attack her home world. When she spoke, her voice was calm and steady. "You'll find out soon enough." 3 days after the Galactic Council's vote, the Zephyrian war fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. The small formation consisted of 3 cruisers, each one larger than any ship humanity had ever built. Their hulls gleamed with the silver-blue metal that the Zephyrians used for all their vessels, and energy crackled along their surfaces as their shields powered up. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, watching the alien ships appear on his screens. Jake was a veteran of the Martian colony wars and had spent 15 years fighting pirates in the outer asteroid belts. He was a tall man with graying hair and hands that bore the scars of too many battles. Around him, his crew worked quietly. At their stations, their faces grim but determined. "3 cruisers, sir," reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from the sensor station. She was young, barely 25, but had already proven herself in several skirmishes with raiders. "They're holding position at the edge of scanner range." "Any sign of more ships?" Jake asked, settling into his command chair. "Negative, sir. Just the 3. Amy paused, then added, "Sir, those ships are huge. Each one outmasses our entire patrol fleet." Jake nodded grimly. The patrol fleet consisted of 6 destroyers and 2 frigates, all that Earth had available for immediate response. The larger ships of the fleet were scattered across human space, protecting colonies and trade routes. It would take weeks to gather them together. "Communications. Open a channel to the other ships," Jake ordered. "Channel open, sir," responded the communications officer. "All ships. This is Morrison. We all know what we're facing here. Those alien ships have better weapons, better shields, and better everything. But they don't know how humans fight. Remember, your training and stick to the plan." A series of acknowledgments came back from the other ship captains. These were all experienced officers who had fought pirates, raiders, and worse in the dark spaces between worlds. They knew the odds, but they also knew their duty. Suddenly, every communication device on every human ship began broadcasting the same message. The voice was artificial, translated from the Zephyrian language into English. "Primitive humans of the 3rd planet," the voice announced. "I am Fleet Commander Zorvin of the Zephyrian Empire. By order of the Galactic Council, you will surrender your military forces and accept galactic authority over your species. You have one of your hours to comply." Jake stood up from his chair and walked to the communication station. "Put me on all frequencies, including the alien ones." "Yes, sir." "You're broadcasting to everyone." Jake cleared his throat and spoke in the calm, steady voice that had carried him through dozens of battles. "Fleet Commander Zorvin, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Force. I have a message for you and your Galactic Council." He paused for a moment, thinking of his daughter back on Earth, of the billions of people who were counting on him and his small fleet to buy them. "Time. Go to hell." The silence that followed lasted for nearly 10 minutes. Jake could imagine the confusion on the alien ships as they tried to understand the human response. Finally, the artificial voice returned. "Your crude response will not save you. We will now demonstrate the futility of resistance." The lead Zephyrian cruiser began moving toward the human formation, its weapons powering up. Energy readings spiked across human sensors as the alien ship prepared to fire. "All ships, execute alpha pattern," Jake commanded. The human ship suddenly scattered in different directions, moving in patterns that seemed random but had been drilled into their crews for months. The Zephyrian ship fired, sending a beam of pure energy through the space where the human formation had been seconds before. "Rodriguez, take your destroyer and circle around their port side," Jake ordered over the communication system. "Use the asteroids for cover." "Understood, sir," came Amy's voice. The UES Lightning, Amy's destroyer, broke away from the formation and headed toward a nearby asteroid field. The human ship was fast and nimble compared to the massive Zephyrian cruiser, which turned slowly to track its movement. Meanwhile, Jake led the rest of the fleet in a direct assault on the lead cruiser. The Zephyrian shields flared as human missiles, and projectile weapons struck them, but the energy barriers held firm. Return fire from the alien ship destroyed one of the human frigates in a single blast. Sir, their shields are too strong, reported the weapons officer. Our missiles aren't getting through. Keep firing, Jake ordered. We need to keep their attention. On the other side of the battlefield, Amy Rodriguez had positioned her ship behind a large asteroid. She watched as the second Zephyrian cruiser moved to intercept her, its weapons charging for another shot. Engineering, I need everything you can give me, Amy said over the ship's internal communication system. Engines are at 110%, came the reply from Chief Engineer Pete Collins. Any more and we'll blow the reactor. Do it anyway, Amy said grimly. The UES Lightning shot out from behind the asteroid like a bullet, heading straight for the Zephyrian cruiser. The alien ship fired, but Amy had timed her move perfectly. The energy beam passed harmlessly behind. Her ship as she accelerated toward her target. What is she doing? Jake muttered, watching Amy's ship on his screen. The answer became clear as the UES Lightning smashed into the Zephyrian cruiser's shield at maximum speed. The human ship's hull was reinforced with layers of steel and titanium, making it incredibly strong but also incredibly heavy. The impact overloaded the alien ship's shields and sent both vessels spinning. Amy's ship was badly damaged, but the Zephyrian cruiser was worse off. Its shields were down and its hull was cracked. Secondary explosions rippled along its surface as internal systems failed. All ships, concentrate fire on the damaged cruiser, Jake ordered. Human missiles and projectile weapons struck the wounded alien ship from multiple directions. Without its shields, the advanced hull materials could not protect it from the sustained bombardment. The Zephyrian cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The remaining two alien ships immediately began retreating toward the edge of the solar system. Their powerful engines allowed them to pull away from the slower human vessels. Let them go, Jake said as his weapons officer asked for permission to pursue. We've done what we came to do. As the alien ships disappeared from his sensors, Jake opened a channel to Amy's ship. The UES Lightning was badly damaged but still operational. Nice flying, Rodriguez, he said. Thank you, sir, came her voice, strained but proud. Did we really just make aliens run away? Jake smiled for the first time since the battle began. Yes, Lieutenant, we sure did. But even as he celebrated the small victory, Jake knew this was only the beginning. The aliens would be back, and next time they would bring more ships. The human fleet had shown they could fight, but they had also revealed their tactics and capabilities. The real test was yet to come. On the bridge of the retreating Zephyrian flagship, Fleet Commander Zorven stared at his screens in disbelief. One of his cruisers had been destroyed by primitive humans using crude weapons and suicide tactics. It was impossible, yet it had happened. Send a message to the Empire, he ordered his communications officer. Tell them we need reinforcements. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that did not exist on any public map, Admiral Chris Thompson stood before a wall of monitors that showed the entire solar system. Each screen displayed real-time data from sensors that the Galactic Council had never suspected existed. Chris was a stocky man in his 50s, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many classified briefings. He had been waiting for this day for over 20 years. Sir, we have confirmation, reported Commander Janet Phillips from her station. The Zephyrian fleet has retreated beyond scanner range. Captain Morrison's forces succeeded in destroying one enemy cruiser. Chris nodded, but his expression remained grim. One cruiser out of 3. They'll be back with more ships and a better understanding of our tactics. How long do we have? Intelligence estimates 48 to 72 hours. Before they can organize a larger response, answered Dr. Helen Brooks, the head of the Terra Defense Initiative. Helen was a brilliant woman who had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. She wore civilian clothes, but everyone in the room knew she held more real authority than most generals. "Then it's time," Chris said simply. He turned to face the room full of officers and scientists who had been working in secret for decades. "Ladies and gentlemen, initiate Protocol 7. Across the solar system, things that had been hidden began to reveal themselves. On the dark side of Earth's moon, massive hatches opened in what appeared to be crater walls. The electromagnetic signatures that had made the area look like natural geological formations suddenly disappeared, revealing the true purpose of the installations. The Luna Defense Complex was humanity's most closely guarded secret. Built over 15 years using materials from asteroid mining operations, it was disguised to look like nothing more than natural moon craters from orbit. Now, as the camouflage system shut down, the complex revealed itself to be a massive shipyard and weapons platform. "Luna Complex is reporting full operational status," announced Lieutenant Colonel Steve Martinez from his control station. "All 36 berths are showing green lights." On the screens above them, Chris and his team watched as ships began emerging from the lunar facility. These were not the crude, bulky vessels that the aliens had observed patrolling human space. These ships were sleek, deadly, and incorporated technology that would have shocked the Galactic Council. The UES Valkyrie was the first to clear the lunar berths. It was a heavy cruiser, nearly as large as the Zephyrian ships, but built with a combination of human engineering and carefully reverse-engineered alien technology. Its hull was made from a composite material that could absorb energy weapon strikes, and its weapon systems used principles learned from decades of studying captured alien equipment. "How many ships do we have available?" Chris asked. 87. Major vessels completed and ready for deployment," Helen reported. "Another 43 in various stages of completion. The entire project has been running for 22 years. The secret had been well kept. Every piece of alien technology that humanity had encountered, from crashed ships to equipment stolen from pirates, had been brought to facilities like this one for study. Teams of scientists and engineers had worked around the clock to understand and improve upon alien designs. But the ships were only part of the revelation. Across the solar system, other installations were revealing themselves. On Mars, what appeared to be standard human colonies suddenly showed their true nature as heavily fortified military bases. The asteroid mining stations that the aliens had dismissed as primitive economic activities were actually sensor networks and weapons platforms. "Sir, we're receiving activation signals from all deep space monitoring stations," reported Communications Officer Linda Hayes. "The entire early warning network is coming online." The early warning network was perhaps humanity's greatest achievement. Using asteroid bases disguised as mining operations, humans had been secretly monitoring alien ship movements throughout their region of the galaxy for over a decade. The aliens believed they were observing human space, but in reality, humanity had been watching them. "What about the orbital platforms?" Chris asked. Major Kevin Murphy, the tactical operations officer, checked his screens. "All platforms are responding. The aliens surveyed our orbital defenses last year, but they only saw the decoy installations." The decoy installations had been a stroke of genius. Humanity had built obvious primitive-looking weapons platforms in Earth orbit, complete with nuclear missiles and kinetic projectile systems. The aliens had observed these installations and concluded that human orbital defense was weak and outdated. They had never suspected that the real defense platforms were hidden among what appeared to be commercial satellites and space stations. Dr. Brooks, what's the status on our special projects? Chris asked. Helen smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Project Prometheus is ready for field testing. Project Thor is fully operational, and Project Fenrir exceeded all expectations during the last simulation. These projects represented humanity's most advanced military technology. Project Prometheus involved weapon systems that used principles discovered through the study of alien physics. Project Thor was a network of kinetic bombardment platforms hidden throughout the solar system. Project Fenrir was something that even Chris did not fully understand, involving research into exotic matter and dimensional mechanics. "Sir," interrupted Commander Phillips, "we're receiving a priority communication from Earth Command." The main screen switched to show General Patricia Moore, the head of Earth's military forces. Patricia was a tough woman who had risen through the ranks during the Martian colony wars. Her face was grim but determined. "Chris, we've received word from our intelligence network," Patricia said without preamble. "The Zephyrians are mobilizing their home fleet. We're looking at a minimum of 50 ships, possibly more." "Understood," Chris replied. "Our forces will. Be ready." "There's something else," Patricia continued. "Our agents report that other alien species are watching this situation closely. If we can defeat the Zephyrians decisively, it will send a message to the entire galaxy." Chris nodded. This had always been the plan. Humanity could not afford to appear weak or vulnerable. The only way to ensure Earth's independence was to demonstrate such overwhelming strength that no alien species would dare to attack them. "What about civilian evacuation?" asked Dr. Brooks. "Proceeding as planned," Patricia answered. "The orbital habitats are being prepared to house refugees from Earth's surface if necessary, but we're hoping it won't come to that." After the communication ended, Chris turned to address his staff. "I want all ship captains briefed on the new situation within 6 hours. Make sure they understand that this is not just about defending Earth. This is about establishing humanity's place in the galaxy." "Sir," asked Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, "what if the aliens have more ships than we anticipated?" Chris was quiet for a moment, thinking about the young men and women who would be risking their lives in the coming battle. Then he looked at the screens showing humanity's hidden fleet, ships that represented the best of human engineering and determination. "Then we'll show them that humans don't give up easily," he said finally. "We've been preparing for this for 20 years. Our people are ready, our ships are ready, and our technology is better than anything they've seen from us before. Doctor." Brooks checked her data pad and looked up with satisfaction. "Admiral, all stations are reporting ready status. The fleet can deploy within 12 hours. "Then let's get started," Chris said. "Send the activation codes to all fleet commanders. It's time for humanity to show the galaxy what we're really capable of." Supreme Commander Veltok stood in the war room of the Zephyrian High Command, his forearms gesturing angrily at the holographic display that showed the remains of his destroyed cruiser. The massive Zephyrian was known throughout the Empire for his tactical brilliance and his complete lack of patience for failure. His silver eyes, which had witnessed the conquest of a dozen worlds, now burned with fury. "Explain to me," Veltok said in a voice that made his subordinates step backward, "how a single primitive human destroyer managed to destroy one of our most advanced cruisers." Fleet Commander Zorvan, who had barely escaped the battle with his life, stood at attention before his superior. The smaller Zephyrian's blue-tinted skin had turned pale with fear. He had commanded successful military operations for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for the human response. "Sir, the humans used suicide tactics," Zorvan reported. "One of their ships deliberately rammed our vessel at maximum speed. Our shields were not designed to withstand that type of kinetic impact. Suicide tactics, Veltak repeated slowly. You are telling me that these primitives are willing to die rather than surrender? Yes, sir. The human commander refused our offer of surrender and used language that our translators could not properly interpret. Their response was both crude and defiant. Veltak turned to study the tactical display more carefully. The human ships had moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully coordinated. Their weapons, while primitive, had been used with surprising effectiveness. Most disturbing of all was the human willingness to sacrifice their own ships to achieve tactical objectives. Admiral Krindar, Veltak called to his chief tactical advisor. What do our intelligence reports say about human military capabilities? Admiral, Krindar was an older Zephyrian whose 3 arms moved constantly as he accessed multiple data streams simultaneously. He had spent his entire career analyzing alien military technologies and had never encountered anything like the human problem. Sir, our observations show that humans use inefficient technology and wasteful tactics, Krindar reported. Their ships are heavily armored because they lack proper shield technology. Their weapons are kinetic projectiles because they have not developed energy weapons. Their strategy appears to be based on overwhelming force rather than technological superiority. Yet they destroyed one of our cruisers, Veltak pointed out. Yes, sir. It appears we underestimated their willingness to accept casualties. Most civilized species surrender when faced with superior technology. Humans seem to fight regardless of the odds. Veltak studied the tactical display for several more minutes, his mind working through the implications. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 17 species over the past century, and all of them had surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. The humans were presenting an entirely new type of challenge. How many ships do we have available for immediate deployment? Veltak asked. 53 major vessels, sir, answered Fleet Administrator Molrex. The 3rd and 5th battle groups are currently on patrol, but they can be recalled within 36 hours. Do it, Veltak ordered. I want every available ship prepared for deployment to the human system. This time, we will not underestimate our opponents. The war room erupted into activity as Zephyrian officers began issuing orders. Ships that were scattered across the Empire began receiving recall orders. Supply convoys were redirected to support the massive fleet buildup. The Zephyrian military machine, which had been dormant for several years, suddenly came to life. Sir, interrupted Communications Officer Telvar, we are receiving a message from the Galactic Council. They are asking for a status report on the human situation. Veltak's expression darkened. The Galactic Council had authorized this operation, but they expected it to be completed quickly and quietly. The loss of a Zephyrian cruiser to primitive humans was already causing political problems within the Empire. Tell the Council that the situation is under control, Veltak ordered. The humans will be brought to compliance within the week. Yes, sir, Telvar replied, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. As his staff continued their preparations, Veltak pulled up detailed intelligence files on human military history. What he read made him increasingly uncomfortable. Humans had been fighting wars against each other for their entire recorded history. They had developed military technology and tactics through constant conflict. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to become more dangerous when faced with extinction. Admiral Krindar, Veltak called. I want a complete analysis of human military doctrine, study their historical conflicts, and try to predict their likely responses to our attack. Sir, we have limited information about human internal conflicts, Krindar replied. Our intelligence operations have focused on their space-based activities. Then, get me that information, Veltok snapped. I will not be surprised again. Over the next 48 hours, the largest Zephyrian fleet in decades assembled at the edge of their home system. The force consisted of 53 warships, including 12 heavy cruisers, 24 destroyers, and 17 support vessels. It was a fleet capable of conquering most star systems and had never failed to achieve its objectives. Fleet status report, Veltok demanded as he took his position on the bridge of the flagship ZES Dominion. All ships report ready for hyperspace. Jump, announced Navigation Officer Yelton. Weapon systems are charged and shields are at maximum power. Sir, added Intelligence Officer Pexara, our long-range sensors show no change in human deployments. They appear to be maintaining their normal patrol patterns. Veltok found this information puzzling. Any intelligent species would be mobilizing their entire fleet after losing a battle with a superior enemy. The humans seemed to be acting as if nothing had happened. Perhaps they do not understand the magnitude of the force we are bringing against them, suggested Admiral Krindar. Or perhaps they are planning something, Veltok replied grimly. His study of human military history had revealed a species that specialized in unexpected tactics and last-minute reversals. Maintain full sensor sweeps during our approach. I want to know about any human activity, no matter how small. Yes. Sir, came the response from multiple stations. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump, Veltok commanded. Destination, the human home system. We will show these primitives the true power of the Zephyrian Empire. The massive fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind only the faint energy signatures that marked their departure. In the Strategic Planning Center of the Zephyrian High Command, junior officers worked frantically to analyze the limited intelligence they had on human capabilities. What they did not know was that their every move had been monitored by human intelligence assets. Hidden sensors disguised as space debris had tracked the fleet buildup. Human agents operating undercover within the Zephyrian Empire had provided detailed information about ship capabilities and tactical doctrine. Most importantly, the humans knew exactly when and where the Zephyrian fleet would arrive in their system. The trap was already being prepared, and the aliens were flying directly into it. On the bridge of the ZES Dominion, Veltok studied the tactical displays and felt confident about the coming battle. 53 ships against a handful of human vessels seemed like overwhelming odds. He could not imagine any way that the primitives could mount an effective defense. He was about to learn that imagination was just one of many things that separated humans from the rest of the galaxy. Captain Rachel Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching as the Zephyrian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. The aliens had arrived exactly where human intelligence had predicted they would, and exactly when the computers had calculated. Rachel was a veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, a woman in her 40s with steady hands and eyes that never showed fear, even when facing impossible odds. 53 ships confirmed, reported Sensor Officer Tony Garcia from his station. They're maintaining formation at the hyperspace exit point. Any sign they've detected our real fleet? Rachel asked. Negative, ma'am, Tony replied. They're scanning the system, but they're only picking up our decoy forces and the patrol ships. Rachel nodded with satisfaction. The human fleet had been carefully positioned to create the illusion of a desperate last stand. A dozen ships, including several damaged vessels from recent pirate encounters, were arranged in defensive positions around Mars. To alien sensors, it would appear that humanity had gathered its pathetic remaining forces for a final, hopeless Battle. Communications, start broadcasting the distress signals, Rachel ordered. Yes, ma'am, responded Lieutenant Maria Santos, transmitting on all frequencies. The carefully scripted distress calls began flooding communication channels throughout the system. Human voices, some real and some artificially generated, pleaded for help from anyone who might be listening. They spoke of families trapped on planets, of colonies that could not be evacuated, of a species facing extinction. The messages were designed to accomplish two goals. First, they would make the aliens believe that humanity was in complete panic. Second, and more importantly, they would be recorded by alien intelligence services and eventually reach other species throughout the galaxy. When those species learned what happened next, the psychological impact would be enormous. Ma'am, reported Communications Officer David Kim, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. The main screen activated to show Supreme Commander Veltok standing on the bridge of his flagship. The large Zephyrian's 4 arms were spread wide in what Rachel had learned was a gesture of dominance. His silver eyes held no mercy. Primitive humans, Veltok announced. You have seen the futility of resistance. Your pathetic fleet cannot stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Rachel stepped forward so that the alien commander could see her clearly. She was wearing the standard blue uniform of the United Earth Space Force, with the insignia of a captain clearly visible on her collar. When she spoke, her voice was calm and professional. Supreme Commander Veltok, she began, having studied the alien's personnel file extensively. This is Captain Rachel Stone of the UES Liberty. I am the senior officer of the Mars Defense Force. She paused for a moment, as if gathering courage, then continued in a voice that carried just the right amount of desperation. We are prepared to discuss terms of surrender. The Zephyrian commander's expression showed satisfaction. This was exactly what he had expected from a primitive species when faced with overwhelming force. His intelligence reports had indicated that humans were cowards who would surrender when properly intimidated. You will power down all weapons. And surrender your ships intact, Veltok demanded. Your military personnel will be processed as prisoners of war. Your civilian populations will be relocated to designated areas under galactic authority. We need time to coordinate with our other forces, Rachel replied, letting her voice shake slightly. Some of our ships are scattered throughout the system. It will take several hours to recall them. You have 2 hours, Veltok announced. If any human ship fires upon our forces, we will destroy every vessel in your pathetic fleet. The communication ended, and Rachel allowed herself a small smile. The aliens had taken the bait completely. Their fleet was already moving into the solar system, confident that the humans were preparing to surrender. Colonel Turner, Rachel said, activating her command communications. Are you monitoring this? Every word, Captain, came the voice of Colonel Alex Turner from his position deep beneath the surface of Mars. Alex was a combat engineer who had spent 5 years turning the Red Planet into the most heavily fortified position in human space. My teams are ready. What the aliens did not know was that Mars had been more than just a human colony for the past decade. Using mining equipment and construction robots, human engineers had honeycombed the planet with tunnels, bunkers, and weapons installations. The surface installations that the aliens could see were just a tiny fraction of the planet's true defensive capabilities. Incoming ships are maintaining course for Mars orbit, reported Tony Garcia. They're spreading out into attack formation. Rachel watched the tactical display as the Zephyrian fleet moved deeper into the solar system. The aliens were being careful, maintaining proper spacing and keeping their shields raised, but they were still falling for the trap. Their ships were powerful, but they were designed for fighting other civilized species that followed accepted rules of warfare. "Ma'am," announced Lieutenant Santos, "we're receiving transmissions from the other ships. They're requesting orders. Tell them to maintain position and continue the surrender protocols," Rachel ordered. "But make sure everyone knows that when I give the signal, they need to move fast." The next hour passed slowly as the two fleets maneuvered into position. The Zephyrian ships formed a classic encirclement pattern around the human forces, with their heaviest vessels positioned to deliver maximum firepower. The humans continued to broadcast surrender negotiations, asking for more time and making increasingly desperate offers. "Captain," reported Chief Navigator Paul Mitchell, "the alien fleet is now within optimal range of the Mars defense grid." Rachel felt her heart rate increase. This was the moment that would determine humanity's future. If the plan failed, Earth would fall within days. If it succeeded, the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. "All ships. This is Captain Stone," she announced on the command frequency. "Execute Dragonflight in 10 seconds. Dragonflight was the code name for humanity's most desperate gambit. Every ship in the Mars Defense Force suddenly accelerated to maximum speed, not toward the enemy, but toward specific coordinates that had been programmed weeks in advance. To the aliens, it would appear that the humans were scattering in panic. "What are they doing?" Supreme Commander Veltok demanded from his flagship as he watched the human ships break formation. "It appears they are attempting to flee," reported his tactical officer. "Should we pursue?" "All ships, close formation and destroy the human vessels," Veltok ordered. "Show them that there is no escape." The Zephyrian fleet moved to pursue the fleeing human ships, their formation tightening as they concentrated their firepower. This was exactly what Rachel and her planners had hoped would happen. "Colonel Turner," Rachel said into her communicator as her ship raced toward Mars. "The package is delivered." Deep beneath the surface of Mars, Alex Turner watched his tactical displays as the alien fleet moved into perfect position. Years of preparation had led to this moment. The Red Planet was not just a colony or a military base. It was the largest weapons platform that humanity had ever constructed. "All stations, this is Turner," he announced to his teams scattered throughout the planet's underground installations. "Light them up." The surface of Mars erupted as thousands of concealed weapons positions revealed themselves. Missile launchers that had been disguised as mining equipment began firing. Energy weapons that had been hidden beneath false rock formations powered up. Kinetic bombardment systems that had been built into the planet's crust opened fire. But the most shocking revelation was the planetary defense grid itself. Mars had been equipped with a network of energy weapons that used the planet's core as a power source. The system was based on alien technology that humans had captured and improved upon, creating weapons more powerful than anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. The alien fleet, caught in close formation while pursuing the human ships, found themselves in the center of the most concentrated firepower in the galaxy. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before began exploding as Mars unleashed its hidden arsenal. "Impossible," Veltok whispered, as he watched his fleet being systematically destroyed. The battle for Mars lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, only a handful of Zephyrian ships remained, and they were fleeing toward the edge of the system as fast as their damaged engines could carry them. Rachel Stone watched the tactical display with satisfaction as the remaining alien ships disappeared into hyperspace. The trap had worked perfectly, and humanity had just announced its arrival as a major power in the galaxy. The few surviving Zephyrian ships that escaped the Mars massacre limped back to their home system, carrying news that sent shockwaves throughout the Empire. Supreme Commander Veltok, his flagship badly damaged and his pride shattered, stood before the High Council with a report that no one wanted to believe. 50 ships, repeated High Admiral Zexron, his forearms trembling with rage. You lost 50 ships to a handful of primitive humans? The intelligence was completely wrong, Veltok replied, his voice hollow with defeat. Mars was not a simple colony. It was a fortress. The humans had weapons we have never encountered before, energy systems that used their planet's core as a power source. The council chamber erupted into chaos as Zephyrian leaders tried to understand how their most powerful fleet had been destroyed so completely. Emergency communications were sent to every corner of the Empire, calling for the mobilization of their entire military force. But even as the Zephyrians struggled to comprehend their defeat, Admiral Kate Sullivan was preparing humanity's response. Kate was a tall woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen humanity's darkest secrets. She stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching as the largest fleet in human history emerged from concealment behind Jupiter's massive bulk. "Fleet status report," Kate commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had planned this moment for decades. "All ships reporting ready, Admiral," responded Captain Ben Harper, her chief of staff. Ben was a former intelligence officer who understood better than most what humanity was about to reveal to the galaxy. 237 major vessels, all equipped with the latest technology upgrades. Kate nodded as she studied the tactical displays. This fleet represented 20 years of secret construction, hidden shipyards, and technological development that the galaxy had never suspected. Each ship incorporated not just human engineering, but improvements on alien designs that had been captured, stolen, or purchased through covert operations. "Communications? Open a channel to the Zephyrian home system," Kate ordered. "Channel open, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim. Kate stood before the main display, knowing that her words would be recorded and transmitted throughout the galaxy. When she spoke, her voice was calm and professional, but carried an undertone of absolute authority. "Zephyrian High Command, this is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the United Earth Space Force. Your fleet attacked our system without provocation and was destroyed. We are now prepared to discuss terms for your surrender." The silence that followed lasted for nearly an hour. When the response finally came, it was not from the Zephyrian military, but from their civilian government. High Chancellor Mordek appeared on the screen, his silver skin pale with fear. "Admiral Sullivan," the alien leader began, his voice shaking. "There has been a misunderstanding. The Galactic Council authorized a limited action to bring humanity into compliance with galactic law. We never intended—" "You intended to enslave my species," Kate interrupted. "You failed. Now you will face the consequences." The human fleet began moving toward the Zephyrian home system, and as they did, the true scope of humanity's hidden power became clear. The ships were not just numerous, they were technologically advanced beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Their hulls incorporated composite materials that could absorb energy weapon strikes. Their shields used principles borrowed from a dozen different alien species. Their weapon systems fired projectiles at relativistic speeds and energy beams that could punch through any known armor. "Admiral," reported Captain Harper. "We're receiving communication requests from 17 different species. Word is spreading. Fast!" "Let them watch," Kate replied. "It's time the galaxy understood what humanity is capable of." As the human fleet approached Zephyrian space, other alien fleets began arriving at the edge of the system. The Corellian Confederation, the Veltaran Alliance, and a dozen other species sent ships to observe what they believed would be humanity's final defeat. Instead, they found themselves witnessing the emergence of a new galactic power. The UES Prometheus was a masterpiece of human engineering, incorporating lessons learned from every alien technology humanity had encountered. Its main weapons could fire kinetic projectiles at 10% of light speed, while its energy systems used exotic matter principles discovered through captured alien equipment. Most impressive of all was its defensive system, which could not only deflect energy weapons but actually absorb and redirect their power. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer Lisa Warren, "Zephyrian Home Fleet is mobilizing. 68 ships confirmed, with more launching from orbital shipyards." Kate smiled grimly. The Zephyrians were preparing for a conventional fleet battle, not understanding that humanity had moved far beyond conventional warfare. The human ships began spreading out into formations that seemed random, but were actually carefully calculated to maximize their technological advantages. "All ships, execute Protocol Omega," Kate commanded. Protocol Omega was humanity's ultimate demonstration of technological superiority. Each human ship began broadcasting on frequencies that revealed the true extent of their capabilities. Passive, sensors that had been hidden throughout Zephyrian space suddenly activated, showing that humanity had been monitoring the Empire for years. Stealth ships that had been operating undetected for months revealed themselves, proving that human technology was far more advanced than anyone had suspected. But the most shocking revelation came when the human fleet demonstrated their new faster-than-light communication system. Using principles based on quantum entanglement, human ships could coordinate their actions instantaneously across vast distances. This gave them a tactical advantage that no alien species could match. "Admiral," announced Communications Officer Sandra Torres, "we're receiving surrender offers from 12 Zephyrian colony worlds. They're requesting protection from their own government." "Tell them their requests are being considered," Kate replied. "But first we finish this." The battle that followed was less a fight than a demonstration. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, their weapons striking with impossible accuracy, while their defenses absorbed everything the Zephyrians could throw at them. Within 2 hours, the Zephyrian home fleet was completely destroyed, and their orbital installations were under human control. "Ma'am," reported Captain Harper, "we're receiving a general surrender transmission from the Zephyrian High Council." Kate studied the tactical displays one final time, then nodded. "Accept their surrender, but make it clear that this is unconditional. They will submit to human authority and make reparations for their unprovoked attack." As the news of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy, alien governments began reassessing everything they thought they knew about the human species. The primitive, violent race that they had dismissed as backward savages had just demonstrated military technology that surpassed anything in galactic civilization. "Admiral," said Ben Harper quietly, "I'm receiving communications from the Galactic Council. They're requesting an emergency session." Kate looked out at the stars, where alien fleets were already withdrawing from Zephyrian space. The galaxy had just learned that humanity was not a species to be underestimated or ignored. The balance of power had shifted permanently. "Tell the Council we'll attend their session," she said finally. "But this time, they'll be listening to us." The human fleet began its journey back to Earth, leaving behind a destroyed Zephyrian empire and a galaxy that would never again make the mistake of underestimating humanity. The age of human expansion had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. On worlds throughout the galaxy, alien leaders studied the recordings of the battle and came to the same conclusion. Humanity was no longer a minor species to be ignored or controlled. They were a major power that demanded respect, and they had the strength to enforce that demand. The galaxy had been warned. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened just 18 hours after the destruction of the Zephyrian home fleet. The massive chamber buzzed with nervous energy as delegates from across the galaxy took their seats. But this time the atmosphere was completely different. Where there had once been casual arrogance, now there was fear and uncertainty. Ambassador Lisa Parker walked into the chamber with measured steps, her posture straight and confident. The same woman who had sat quietly while alien delegates mocked. Humanity now commanded the attention of every being in the room. Behind her walked a security detail of 4 humans in military uniforms, their presence serving as a reminder of what human forces had just accomplished. The chamber fell silent as Lisa took her place at the human delegation's table. This time, however, the table was not the small, insignificant platform tucked away in a corner. The council had hastily rearranged the seating to place humanity in a position of prominence, directly facing the speaker's podium. Council Speaker. Aldarin, the ancient being whose species had founded the galactic government thousands of years ago, stood slowly at his podium. His normally steady voice carried a tremor of uncertainty as he called the session to order. The Council recognizes Ambassador Lisa Parker of the human species, Aldarin announced, his words translated into dozens of languages by the floating devices around the chamber. Lisa stood and activated her communication device, the same primitive-looking equipment that the aliens had once mocked. Now, that same device commanded absolute attention from every delegate in the room. "Honored delegates," Lisa began, her voice calm and professional. "I come before you today not as a representative of a minor species seeking acceptance, but as the voice of a civilization that demands its rightful place in galactic affairs." The silence that followed was deafening. Delegate after delegate sat frozen in their seats, afraid to make even the smallest sound that might be interpreted as disrespect. 3 days ago, Lisa continued, this council authorized military action against Earth based on the assumption that humanity was weak and primitive. You were wrong. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared above her table showing footage from the Battle of Mars. The delegates watched in horrified fascination as human weapons tore through the Zephyrian fleet with devastating efficiency. The Carillion delegate, the insect-like being that had laughed so loudly during the previous session, now sat motionless with his mandibles clamped shut. The Veltaran representative had shifted to colors that indicated extreme anxiety, while the massive Torvan delegate seemed to have shrunk into his chair. The Zephyrian Empire brought 53 warships to our system, Lisa explained as the footage continued. They believed that overwhelming force would bring humanity to its knees. Instead, they discovered that humanity has been preparing for this moment for decades. The display changed to show the massive human fleet that had emerged from concealment, ships that dwarfed anything the Council had believed humans possessed. Gasps and various alien expressions of shock echoed throughout the chamber. For 50 years you observed our species and concluded that we were primitive and backward, Lisa said, her voice growing stronger. You saw our chemical rockets and assumed we had no better technology. You observed our steel warships and decided we lacked advanced materials. You watched our expansion and believed we were acting without coordination or planning. She paused, to let her words sink in before continuing. In every case, you saw exactly what we wanted you to see. The revelation sent a wave of fear through the assembled delegates. If humanity had been deceiving them about their technological capabilities, what else had they been wrong about? Ambassador Crickstull, the Zephyrian who had proposed the attack, on Earth, sat in a section reserved for species under Council investigation. His once proud posture was now hunched with defeat, and his forearms trembled as he realized the full scope of his mistake. The Zephyrian attack was not just an act of aggression against humanity, Lisa explained. It was a test of galactic resolve. You authorized the enslavement of an entire species based on nothing more than arrogance and prejudice. Today, you must face the consequences of that decision. The display changed again to show real-time footage from Zephyrian space, where human ships patrolled the ruins of the alien empire. Former Zephyrian colonies had already begun requesting human protection, preferring occupation by humanity to continued rule by their own government. The Zephyrian Empire no longer exists as a military power, Lisa announced. Their fleet has been destroyed, their government has surrendered unconditionally, and their former territories are now under human administration. This statement caused an immediate uproar in the chamber. Several delegates tried to speak at once, their voices creating a cacophony of alien languages that the translation devices struggled to process. Ambassador Parker, called out the Altarian delegate, the blue-skinned being who had suggested studying humanity more carefully. Surely you do not intend to maintain permanent control over Zephyrian territories? Lisa turned to face the Altarian, her expression calm but implacable. The former Zephyrian colonies have requested human protection from their previous government. We are considering their requests. The careful diplomatic language did not hide the reality of the situation. Humanity had effectively conquered one of the galaxy's major powers in a matter of days, and they were now in position to either expand their territory or demonstrate unprecedented mercy. What does humanity want? Asked the speaker, his ancient voice carrying decades of political experience. We want what every intelligent species deserves, Lisa replied. The right to exist without fear of attack. The right to expand and explore. The right to be treated as equals rather than subjects. She activated her communication device again, and the display showed a new image. Earth's orbital installations, but not the primitive platforms the aliens had observed before. These were massive space stations and weapons platforms that incorporated technology beyond anything in galactic civilization. For 50 years you watched us and assumed you understood our capabilities, Lisa said. You were wrong about our technology. You were wrong about our military strength. You were wrong about our willingness to fight. The question now is, what else are you wrong about? The chamber erupted into nervous chatter as delegates began whispering urgently to their advisors. Emergency communications were being sent to home governments throughout the galaxy as species reassessed their entire relationship with humanity. I propose the following, Lisa announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. Humanity will accept a permanent seat on this council with full voting rights. We will establish embassies with all willing species and begin true diplomatic relations. The former Zephyrian territories will be administered by human forces until their populations can establish stable governments. And if the council refuses these terms? Asked the speaker. Lisa smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. Then the Council will discover that the Zephyrians were not the only species that has underestimated humanity. The threat was clear, though it was delivered. With perfect diplomatic courtesy, humanity now possessed the military strength to enforce its demands, and the galaxy had no choice but to accept the new reality. "I call for a vote," announced the speaker after a long pause. "All in favor of granting humanity a permanent seat on the Galactic Council?" The vote was unanimous, though Lisa suspected that fear rather than goodwill motivated many of the delegates. The galaxy had learned that humanity was not a species to be ignored or controlled, and they were beginning to understand that cooperation was far preferable to conflict. As the session concluded, delegates began approaching the human delegation, with offers of friendship, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges. The same beings who had laughed at humanity's primitive appearance now competed for the chance to speak with Ambassador Parker. Lisa accepted their overtures with polite professionalism, but she remembered every species that had voted to attack: Earth. The galaxy might be willing to accept humanity now, but trust would have to be earned over time. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human power had begun. 6 months after the destruction of the Zephyrian Empire, the galaxy had settled into a new reality where humanity stood as one of the major powers. The transformation had been swift and complete, reshaping political alliances and trade relationships across dozens of star systems. Ambassador Lisa Parker stood in her new office on Station Alpha, humanity's first major diplomatic facility outside of Earth space. The station orbited the former Zephyrian capital world, now renamed New Geneva in honor of Earth's diplomatic traditions. Through the massive observation windows, she could see human ships patrolling alongside vessels from a dozen other species that had requested permission to establish a presence in the former Zephyrian territories. "The morning briefing, Ambassador," announced her aide, Lieutenant Colonel Janet Hayes, as she entered the office carrying a datapad filled with reports from across human space. Lisa nodded and accepted the briefing materials. Janet was a former Bay military intelligence officer who had transitioned to diplomatic service after the war. Her experience with alien cultures and military analysis made her invaluable in humanity's expanding role as a galactic power. "What's the situation with the Carillion Confederation?" Lisa asked, reviewing the diplomatic reports. "They've formally requested a mutual defense treaty," Janet replied. "Their ambassador seems genuinely impressed with our handling of the Zephyrian refugee crisis. They're offering preferential trade agreements and technology sharing." Lisa smiled at the irony. The same insect-like species that had laughed loudest at human primitiveness were now eager to form an alliance. The Carillions had been among the first to recognize that humanity's mercy toward defeated enemies was as impressive as their military strength. The former Zephyrian colonies had indeed been treated with unexpected generosity. Rather than enslaving or exploiting the conquered populations, humanity had established temporary administrations focused on rebuilding infrastructure and establishing democratic governments. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian civilians to repair war damage, while human diplomats helped former enemy colonies draft new constitutions. "Any word from Admiral Thompson's patrol?" Lisa asked. "The joint fleet exercise with the Altarian Navy concluded successfully," Janet reported. "Admiral Thompson reports that their ships performed well in combined operations. The Altarians are particularly interested in our tactical coordination systems. Admiral Chris Thompson had been promoted to command the new Terran Defense Fleet, a force that patrolled human space and provided security for allied worlds. The fleet represented a new approach to galactic military operations, combining overwhelming firepower with diplomatic restraint. "Ma'am," interrupted Communications Officer Gary Roberts from his station near the office entrance, "I have Commodore Morrison on the line from the Outer Rim Patrol." Lisa activated her communication system to see Jake Morrison's face on the screen. The former destroyer captain had been promoted to Commodore and given command of a joint human-alien patrol force that protected trade routes in the former Zephyrian territories. "Lisa," Jake began, using the informal address that their long friendship allowed, "we've got good news from the Rim. The joint patrol with the Veltaran Alliance intercepted a major pirate fleet yesterday. 14 ships captured, no casualties on our side." "Excellent work, Jake," Lisa replied. "How are the Veltarans working out as partners?" "Better than expected," Jake answered with a grin. "Their ships are fast and their crews are eager to prove themselves. They're still nervous about working with humans. But they're learning that we're not the monsters their government told them we were." The Veltaran Alliance had been among the most reluctant species to accept humanity's rise to power. Their jellyfish-like physiology made them naturally cautious, and their government had spent months debating whether to treat humans as potential allies or threats. The joint patrol operations were part of a carefully planned program to build trust between former enemies. After ending the call with Jake, Lisa walked to the observation lounge where Dr. Helen Brooks was waiting with her monthly technology report. Helen had been promoted to head the new Galactic Technology Exchange, a program that shared selected human innovations with allied species while acquiring alien knowledge in return. "How are the exchange programs working out?" Lisa asked as she joined Helen at the viewing windows. "Beyond our most optimistic projections," Helen replied with satisfaction. "The Altarians have shared their advanced sensor technology, which we're already incorporating into our next generation of ships. In return, they're fascinated by our gravitational manipulation systems." The technology exchanges represented one of humanity's most successful diplomatic initiatives. Rather than hoarding their advanced technology, humans had chosen to share carefully selected innovations with allied species. This approach had built trust and created economic relationships that made war less likely. "What about the education programs?" Lisa asked. "Even better," Helen answered. "We now have human students studying at universities on 12 different worlds, while alien students are attending Earth's major research institutions. The cultural exchange is creating bonds that will last for generations." The education exchanges had been Lisa's personal initiative, based on her belief that lasting peace required mutual understanding. Young humans were learning alien languages and customs, while alien students were discovering that humanity was far more sophisticated than their governments had believed. "Ambassador," called Lieutenant Colonel Hayes from the office, "you have a call from the Galactic Council speaker." Lisa returned to her office and activated the main display to see Speaker Alderin's ancient face on the screen. The elderly alien looked tired but satisfied, a marked change from the fear and uncertainty that had characterized his demeanor 6 months earlier. "Ambassador Parker," Alderin began, "I wanted to personally thank you for humanity's response to the Rimworld crisis. The Rimworld crisis had been humanity's first major test as a galactic power. When the Makari Empire had attempted to conquer a group of independent worlds on the galaxy's edge, the Galactic Council had found itself unable to respond effectively. Humanity had volunteered to lead a coalition force that stopped the invasion and negotiated a peaceful settlement. "We're pleased that we could help, Speaker Alderin," Lisa replied. "The protection of smaller species is one of humanity's core principles." "Indeed," Alderin nodded. "Your species continues to surprise us. We expected conquerors, but instead we found protectors. The galaxy is safer because of humanity's presence. After the call ended, Lisa stood at her office windows watching the traffic in the space around New Geneva. Human ships moved alongside, vessels from a dozen different species, all working together to maintain peace and security in what had once been enemy territory. The transformation had not been easy. There had been diplomatic crises, military tensions, and cultural misunderstandings. Some species still viewed humanity with suspicion, while others sought to exploit human generosity. But overall, the galaxy had accepted its new reality with remarkable speed. A soft chime indicated another incoming communication. This time, the caller was Captain Amy Rodriguez, who had been promoted to command the UES Valkyrie, one of humanity's most advanced cruisers. "Ambassador," Amy began, "we've just received confirmation from Earth Command. The new shipyard at Kepler Station is operational ahead of schedule. We'll be able to triple our production capacity within the year." Lisa nodded with satisfaction. The expansion of human industrial capacity was proceeding on schedule, ensuring that humanity would be able to maintain its military strength while supporting its growing diplomatic commitments. "Any word on the exploration missions?" Lisa asked. "The UES Discovery has made contact with 3 new species in the outer spiral," Amy reported. "All of them have requested diplomatic relations with humanity. It seems our reputation is spreading faster than our ships." As the day continued with its steady stream of reports and communications, Lisa reflected on how completely the galaxy had changed. The species that had once dismissed humanity as primitive savages now competed for human friendship and protection. Former enemies had become allies, and ancient conflicts had been resolved through human mediation. The galaxy had learned that strength without wisdom was merely destruction, while wisdom without strength was merely words. Humanity had demonstrated, both proving that they could fight when necessary, but preferred to build rather than destroy. As the artificial day cycle ended on Station Alpha, Lisa stood once more at her office windows, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were exploring new worlds, human diplomats were negotiating new treaties, and human scientists were working alongside alien colleagues to solve the galaxy's greatest challenges. The galaxy had underestimated Earth, and humanity had responded by becoming the very thing the galaxy needed most. A species strong enough to maintain peace and wise enough to use that strength responsibly. The age of human isolation was over forever. The age of galactic cooperation had begun.